Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. We're in Bionomy. Here we're trying to help you to grow some local and healthy food, and if you're a farmer, have more profitable operations, and basically just trying to build a more sustainable and regenerative world. So today we're going to see what are the considerations, the things you should look at when you're choosing a hydroponic substrate. So this should have been in the last video on the advantages and disadvantages of 3 of the most common substrates, which are rock wool, coco coir, and expanded clay pebbles, but I was a bit lazy, so I made it for this week's video. Okay, so we're going to see what are really the different things you should be looking at, your criterias, when you're making a choice in the substrate. It's not a long video, it's quite simple, so just bear with me and let's get started. Okay, so what should you consider before choosing your hydroponic substrate? So these are 3 things you should know, and let's review what they are. So the considerations on choosing your hydroponic substrate. So the first thing is cation exchange capacity. So that's a fancy word to just say that it represents the interactions between the growing medium and the nutrient solution. So it matters because it influences the control you have over the quantity of nutrients absorbed by the plants. So it goes a bit into the details, so I made a video for that if you want to understand the why behind how cation exchange capacity works. I think it's important to understand why, because it will give you more insight over the functioning of your systems with a more first principle approach. But in a nutshell, the higher the cation exchange capacity is, the more interactions you will have between the nutrients and the growing medium. For example, expanded clay pebbles have a high CEC, and that means that some nutrients will have a tendency to go and stick at the surface of the clay pebbles. And this has an influence on your system because let's say you want to reuse these clay pebbles, but every time there's nutrients that are just on the surface and they stay there. That means that once you put them in water or you put them in another system, they will add nutrients that are not supposed to be there, and therefore you're never really sure of how much nutrients are in your solution, because there is the nutrients you added yourself, but there's also the nutrients that are on the surface of your growing medium. And that's why it's often advised in hydroponics to go for a low CEC medium, so that you don't have this whole drama of interactions between the growing medium and the nutrient solution. So just try to go for something that has a low CEC, that is inert neutral. That will make your life easier. Then you have the water holding capacity, so WHC, blah blah blah. So that's how well the media holds the water. So again, this matters because it influences the choice of your system, because moisture levels affect your plant health and pretty directly. Okay, and it's hydroponics, we're dealing with water and moisture, so this is quite a big one, but it's a bit obvious too, right? So when you don't have enough moisture, you can just have your plant drying and the plant roots drying and then dying. And if you have too much of it, well, the plant can rot or it can drown, so again it ends up dying. So yeah, so water holding capacity, ignore it and the plant will just end up dying. Okay. And then you have AFP, so air-filled porosity. So that's the airflow of the medium, or the spaces that are filled with air. So again, that's very important. So it matters because it influences the oxygen supply to the plant's roots, and the roots of the plant, they need to breathe, they need air, and if they don't have it, they will end up drowning, like with the water holding capacity. So these two, water holding capacity and air-filled porosity, they're quite related, right? If you have too much water holding capacity, then you will have less air-filled porosity and vice versa. Okay, and now, okay, yeah, there's these illustrations I made, so you can, if we zoomed, that's how it will look up, right? You will have the substrate, so here it could be soil or it could be clay pebbles that kind of look like it, and then you will have the water that is at the surface and that fills in the gaps, but you also have some air pockets where the root can get the oxygen, but it can get its water, and it can also get some of the nutrients that are on the growing medium. So here the nutrients are not obvious. To be honest, I forgot to add them in the illustration, but basically if you have a very high cation exchange capacity, well, these pebbles or these soil particles, they will have a lot of nutrients on them, and then the roots, so this greenish thing, will just go and absorb directly on the growing medium instead of on the water. So that's how it will look up if you go and zoom at it. So now we have the other things to consider. So I just bundled them into others, but that doesn't mean they're not important. It's just that the other three are like the pillars or the foundation. That's the thing you should know about. And then the others, it depends on, your situation and blah, blah, blah. So first, the affordability. So depending on your budget, you don't want to go and run yourself and buy something super fancy. So yeah, check up the price. Then there is the sprouting. So are you going to use them to sprout your seeds or just for seedlings and mature plants? Because a seedling or seed or mature plant, they have different requirements for the growing medium. And as you now know, the growing medium will affect the water holding capacity, the airfield porosity, and the cation exchange capacity. So check that out. Then there is the plant stability. So that's a really, really basic stuff the substrate should give to your plant. So the plant needs something to hang on to so it can hold itself upright, and that's this plant stability thing. Okay, so that's like really the basic stuff. And thermal insulation, a bit more fancy words, but that just means if you're somewhere where you have high temperature changes, well, you want a growing medium that can buffer the temperature and have something more stable, so the plant don't just freak out because it gets hot and cold and hot and cold, and eventually it will end up dying. So, and then you have reusability and recyclability, so quite important nowadays, so keep that into consideration. And it will also save you money if you can reuse something over the long term, and it's pretty cool if at the end of the life cycle you can like compost it. For example, like cocoa coir, you can compost it because it's biodegradable, so that's something to consider, very important. Then disease resistance, like again, cocoa coir, for example, has antifungal properties. That's something that can be very useful, and you don't want to have this problem of a substrate that makes your plants sick all the time, right? If you have a business, well, that will cost you money, but if you're just growing your food, that will just piss you off, right? You're just trying to grow your plant and they keep on getting sick and sick and sick. So check up on that. And finally, the handling. So it's how strong or easy to handle is the substrate. Like, is it going to break apart every time you touch it, right? And that also will be annoying. So have something that is easy to move around, easy to store, that you can just put in the garage and stay there, and it just stays okay, and you can keep on using that. Another thing to consider is also availability. I didn't put it there. I don't know if it's because I was lazy or because I didn't have room, but availability. So depending on your region and depending on if you have hydroponic stores next to you or not, you might have access to some substrate or not. So that's pretty much it for your considerations. So when you have a substrate, you can just try to keep these in mind, and depending on the plants you're gonna grow and the system you want to install, very important, you will basically choose a substrate that match with these. But also try not to overthink it, right? It's important to go and practice and just test. Even if it fails, that's how you will learn. So don't go in the trap of too much analysis and paralysis with analysis. I did that a lot, and you don't go anywhere. So just use that as like quick rule of thumb, and then go and try things out, right? That's why I'm gonna make a lot of videos about practice. So actually go and do things and not just stay stuck in the theory. And also linked to that, there will be a video, I don't know if they're already out or if I'm gonna put them after this one, more detailed on cation exchange capacity, so a full video on that, and a video on the advantages and disadvantages of each hydroponic substrate. So for right now, I just did cocoa coir, rock wool, and expanded clay pebbles. So you can basically review that, and then that will help you make your choice. Okay, hope that was helpful. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know also where I could improve, because I'm a beginner, so I might have made some mistakes. So just, yeah, let me know in the comments so I can learn from you, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.